Within 3 weeks, I was on a plane to Japan for a month, came back to an empty house, divorce papers on the counter, and my life.
Wait. That was a lot. Like Japan, why Japan?
I need to get the furthest place possible from my home. I have no idea what to do, where I'm going, if I'm headed in the right direction or not. So I had to learn gut.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Rewire Life podcast. I'm Dr. 𝙏𝙚𝙬𝙚, aka Dr. Rewire. I want to thank you guys for listening and being a part of this community. Look, if you're part of this community, you know what it's like to live an inspired life, trying to do more with your life than what you've ever done before. Because the greatest gift you can have in your life is to express all of it. And you're here because you know that you like to express who you are, be who you are, but not a false sense of who you are, the authentic side of who you are. That's why today's guest is really a dynamic individual who's going to help us understand how to become more in touch with our emotions and how to bring that to life rather than getting Googled all the time. We're going to get to understand who we are from the inside out. And I'm super excited to have my friend Kara Payton here. Kara, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dr. T. I'm so glad to be here.
Let's just go right back to the beginning. Like, when did this journey for you to help people and help women specifically begin, and how did that all begin for you?
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like there's so many chapters of my life that I could tell that story, because you go through different chapters of life and you find yourself completely unveiling something that you didn't know that is going to take you into a new level of your life. And then you think that you get there and you think that you arrive, and then only to find out that you have an entire other layer, an entire other level to offer. And I feel like that's probably the trajectory of life. We'll never really get there. But I feel like the first time really that I was finding myself in just this, I don't know, existential crisis, we'll say, where I could not feel myself and I could not nail down even the most basic function, like, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? I couldn't make myself even make the very next basic decision. And, I had gone through this whole litany of just ignoring my inner child and living my entire life until about 24, 25 years old, and not realizing how much of myself that I had stuffed in a closet and told to sit down and be quiet. These are the things that I'm going to do. And we're in a very do lifestyle where everybody's just, how are you doing? Not how are you feeling? And
but let me just take a second. What does it mean that you stuffed your entire life in a closet? Right? What does that mean exactly?
Well, I would say the first answer to that would be something along the lines of in school. We kind of take these micro observations of what's okay, what's acceptable, what's cool, what's getting people results as far as how to fit in. And I was an extremely observant child. And so I would notice that, the friends that I felt least comfortable with were the ones that I would attribute popularity, or they were most accepted, they were most admired, they were most loved. And even though I could notice and recognize I don't fit in with them, I don't align with them, I wanted to. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be admired. So there was a lot of things very different about me, my personality, my style. I was quirky. I was too much. I was too loud. And so those were very first things that go, okay, in order to fit in with X group, in order to be accepted or talked to by X group, they look like this, they sound like this, they talk to, and I just mirrored them, despite what all of it meant. So what it means to stuff myself into a closet is I basically took all the very unique, we'll say, sharp edges or anything that needed to be sanded down, and I just got rid of it. I made her be quiet. I made her I was tired of the way people looked at me that was just, oh, she's weird. Oh, she's off. Oh, she's loud. I don't know how I feel about her. She stands out. And while we're so big in that, about that now, standing out and being yourself, that was not the modality 20 years ago. So it was basically all about what part of me can stand out that I can shove back in.
So you go through this existential crisis and you're like 24, 25 years old, figuring out the game of life, trying to say, okay, here's the next step. And like, what was the thing that made you sit and say, like, I'm in a crisis? What was that? Because I want people to listen to this and say, like, can they relate to that story? What was the story there that said, I'm at this crisis in my life? What did that look like for you?
It looked like panicking at the idea that I had essentially the task list in my mind, the existential life checkbox that we all kind of have,
Sure.
go to college, get married, have children, buy the house, buy the car, have a successful business, whatever it looks like. And I had done all of it.
Mm-hmm.
I had the house, I had the car, I was a staple in my community. I was a church volunteer. I was the broom parent. I was the place where everybody goes for after school. I was like the cool mom and the great wife. And I had done all of it. And I'll never forget driving down my street, pulling up in my driveway, having zero recollection of how I got there. It was just very much an autopilot. And then I even walked into my house. And only then, in that moment where I'm crossing the threshold of my house, did I kind of realize, oh my God, this is my house, right? And I walked in, and that feeling where you're not where you're supposed to be. I felt as if I was walking into somebody else's house, even to the point where I could recognize intellectually, that's my floor, those are my stairs, those are my pictures, that's my family, there's my kitchen. It was there. I could observe that it was mine, but I still had this inner feeling of, you're not in your house. You're not you. You're not, I didn't know which one it was, but I could see my entire house and think, I'm not in it. I'm not in my body.
Do you think that maybe that I'm not in my house was a metaphor that I'm not in my body?
I think it was looking back then, because I could process that picture on my fridge of the family vacation. I remember planning it. That living room, I remember putting every piece in its place.
Right.
This life that I built, I knew it was mine, but I was so removed. There was some sort of massive disconnect where I couldn't really remember I remember it here. I couldn't remember it here.
Sure. And so what did you do at that point in time? You said, okay, here I am. I'm in this crazy chaos of my life. I'm disconnected from my life. I'm out of my body. I'm out of my life. I don't know. Were you married, kids? What was the story going on at that time?
I was married at the time, 3 children, and I panicked.
How old were your kids at that time? How old were your kids? Just like,
oh gosh, this was 2015. So 7 years ago. So I would be 10, 2, and barely born.
Okay, great. So like 3 kids, basically say under the age of 10, married, and the whole 9 yards. And you say, here I am. I'm in crisis. I built this life, and now I'm lost. I'm stuck. I'm not me anymore. What's the next thing you do?
At first, like I said, total terror. I panicked because I didn't know what the next step would be. I could not recognize even my own. There was no inner voice. I had bogged it down so much that when I asked, there was emptiness. It was just static. So I looked up at the time, because I was at that time, I was in church. I was checking off the boxes. I didn't have a relationship with God or any inner knowing, but I knew to pray. I said, God, if this is all there is to life, let me find peace in that. Let me just be happy. I feel like I climb and climb and climb and climb, get to the top, and I'm disgusted by the fact that there's more to climb. And this time I reached the top and I was still as empty as I was. At least I had the hope of the journey that eventually something in my life will make sense. Eventually I'll be happy. Eventually I'll check off something that goes, all right, I've arrived. I feel good. I feel whole. I'm fulfilled. This makes sense. I had arrived at the existential summit and nothing made sense. And so I asked him, God, if this is all there is, let me have peace with it. But if there's not, show me what the hell I'm missing. Show me in my life where I have just gone so drastically wrong that everything I try to fill my life with ends up just dust. And within 3 weeks, I was on a plane to Japan for a month, came back to an empty house, divorce papers on the counter, and my
wait. That was a lot. You just like briefed over this. What?
Yes.
Like Japan? Why Japan? Why did you go to Japan? What was the deal with Japan? And then what happened in Japan?
So the initial structure was that I knew that my environment was nowhere that I didn't feel home in my environment. So I was like, I need to get the furthest place possible from my home. I was like, I'm in the Midwest. What is the most uncomfortable foreign environment that I can possibly imagine? And at first I remember watching Eat, Pray, Love. She seemed to have had a crisis in that movie. And
I was literally thinking Eat, Pray, Love. I was like, you just had your own Eat, Pray, Love. Literally, that's what I was saying in my head.
Yeah. So when she seemed to end her story in Bali. And so I was like, well, Bali is where I need to go. And I did my research on Bali, got in contact with a great hostel co-living resort where it's just a bunch of travelers go there. They can go alone, they can go in a couple, and they basically create their adventure on the fly. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, so on the fly sounds great. They got back to me and said, we noticed you're a great photographer. I was a photographer at the time. We have plenty of pictures of Bali. Here's our rates for Bali. You're welcome to go. But if you're open to kind of just throwing the dice, we don't have pictures of our resort in Tokyo. If you were to come photograph that, we would pay for your stay. I was like, done.
Wow, okay.
I didn't have any, set anything. So that's how Japan ended up being the thing. It was originally Bali. And Japan was I had never left the country at this point. So this is my first trip anywhere. And there's no English language in it. It's not like you can kind of figure it out and, type a Spanish word because it's made of letters and figure out where you're going. I ended up flying to Beijing first. Talk about the ultimate comfort zone pattern disrupt. I was nowhere that made any sense to me. No letters, no, everything was a character. Nobody spoke or even had a close proximity to speaking a language that I could go, okay, what I'm hearing you say is this, I'm going to translate it. It was so completely the antithesis of everything I was used to. And it was wild to prove yourself, proof by fire, that you are not only capable, but it forced me to listen and hear, to completely, I can't think about any of this. Their thinking doesn't, and logic doesn't come into play here. I have no idea what to do, where I'm going, and if I'm headed in the right direction or not. So I had to learn gut, go with your gut, go with a feeling, I was silent for such a long time because nobody spoke my language. And eventually getting in Japan is a beautiful and wonderful, very English friendly place. If you are, a lot of them are English as a second language.
Sure.
So it kind of took out the total discomfort where you're just raw and directionless and basically in your fight or flight response. But it was a beautiful experience. And it was travel still to this day provides me with such a expansion. When I think in a funnel and I'm trapped and I'm not and I'm just kind of thinking in a very, very small blinders type circle, travel is always it. You're exposing yourself to different ways of life and different meanings and different cultures and different family structures. And it's beautiful. Okay.
So you get back, you go to Japan, you take a bunch of pictures, and then, of course, they're beautiful. I get that, right? So you say, okay, I'm coming back. And you said there's an empty house. Like what happened there?
Well, the structure that my marriage had relied upon was already very damaged. It was just no communication. He had gone through similar childhood that I had, where it's just very volatile and chaotic. And to have done what I did, his greatest need at the time was stability and reliability. And what I had just done essentially was the antithesis of reliability. I had just tucked tail and gotten off. So he left. And I came home with only the choice. I mean, he came back. There was a lot of just back and forth. Just, never mind. You know what you do when you're in a very unhealthy dynamic. And I had just come from, I was like, if I can figure out Japan, the subway system in 2 days, I can figure out how to upend my life here in the States. And I did. We moved out. We moved separate ways. And 2 days before Christmas, I have myself in this new house, sold everything, not a thing to my name, not a single fancy amenity whatsoever. And I'll never forget the first night. I'm realizing I don't have a Christmas tree. I took a gift wrap paper tree, cut it out and taped it to the wall. And we ate Christmas dinner on a Home Depot box. And I remember thinking, there's so much about this that should absolutely terrify me. Mm-hmm. And yet I feel so free. I feel like life itself has just gifted me with the greatest opportunity ever. And all of the stuff that I thought would stabilize me and create certainty and create foundation, all of it was gone. And it was about now creating a foundation that's within, that is completely and totally unshakable. No matter where
you are. That's kind of what you do now, right? Like you have a program called the Unshakable Program. You have a podcast called the Happiness Habit. And this is kind of what you do now. So tell us now, who you work with, how you help them, and what this Unshakable project is really all about.
It honestly has been devoted to any woman that finds herself exhausted from being so in her body, uncoupled from her own place where she's trying to find happiness in a relationship. She's swiping left, she's adding it to a cart, she's drinking it out of a wine glass. She's trying to find some means of, how can I make this make sense? How can I make my life easier? How can I feel better? And it's not about adding more stuff. It's not about adding more knowledge. It's about actually removing it and taking it all away, because this core inner being and this inner sense of knowing has always been there. We've spent our entire lives, most of us, doing everything we can to get as far away from that as we can, because it didn't make sense. It was kind of unpredictable. We didn't know where it was going to go or what results, and it's too vulnerable. If that's who I really am and I go out into the world and it's rejected, I'm screwed. So as kids with survival and the very, very inept need to belong and feel good around each other and have and love and be accepted, we usually very easily just swipe that stuff off of our plate and become something else. And we're typically living, especially in our 20s and 30s, when we're still not really sure who the hell we are, we're spending our entire lives trying to find other ways to belong, other ways to be happy, everything but doing this work that is our emotional and our bodies and everything. So it is for any woman who knows something's missing and is tired of Googling herself to pieces to try and figure out what that piece is.
I love that. I think that's such an important thing to do inside today's world. Now, you basically, how did you get to these solutions? So you're having dinner, a Christmas dinner, and then how did you figure all this stuff out? What did you do? How long did the journey take? What was that like for you? And what did you
painful.
discover about yourself?
So at first I started working with Tony Robbins on a participation basis, and then I became a volunteer, and then I was offered a staff position very soon after. This environment was so wonderful because it unlocks who you are and it turns it way up. And eventually it became to where it was such a high demand job that I was going to be required to be out of the month, 2 or 3 weeks out of the month, I'm away from my children. So our paths parted. It was such a beautiful journey, but I knew that there was so many other different aspects as far as a spiritual component, physiological component that I wanted to bring to the space, that I needed to kind of put my own spin on everything. And everything that I want to do is not the modalities. It's not the quotes. It's not the stuff that's like, here, get a bunch of really, really woo-woo mic drop type stuff that sounds really good on paper, but we don't live on paper. We don't live in quotes. It doesn't make sense to our bodies. When we can hear it, we feel great. We have this dopamine high and we think, all right, I've got it figured out. And then the workshop is over. The event is over. The microphone is turned off. And then we don't know how to apply it to our lives because we're not dealing with like things that you deal with on a regular basis. The actual subconscious, you can recognize a belief that you have that screws you over on the regular, but how do you go about actually diving beneath it, actually figuring it out, going into that memory where you created that belief and redefining it in a way that empowers you instead of disempower you? So we go through a long-winded way of saying we actually do the work and it's not always the most pleasurable thing. It's sometimes it's painful. Sometimes we found that the person that was holding us back from our life, it's our own hand. So it's that's what I do.
I love that. I love that. And so you've been doing this work and you're helping people grow. Like, where do you see this work going for yourself and for the community? And what do you think is the biggest thing that women struggle with today? That's a two-folded question. But let's start with the first one. Where's the biggest struggle you think women deal with today? And then where do you think you see this work going inside the future?
The biggest thing women struggle with today is not being in their bodies, not having the lack of self-trust. They're not authentic. They don't think they can be authentic. This vulnerability requires softness, and we've basically muted the power in feminine energy and muting the power of being a woman. We now think that it's about doing everything a man can do, and we're basically replacing our inherent nature with trying to play the game from a different gender entirely. And we're now about achieving and massive success and outward stuff. That is not what our MO is. Our MO is it's being, it's stationary. And so because we've spent most of our lives operating in an entirely different modality, we don't know how to have rapport with ourselves. We don't know how to trust ourselves. We don't know how to answer our own questions and then go, period, not question mark. And so the biggest thing is just being authentic. I think it's so it falls into so many different lines. When we don't have rapport with ourselves, we can't even make the basic promise of, I'm going to, for this 10 days, I'm going to, for this morning, do what I say I'm going to do, when I'm going to do it, because I have chosen it, because the answer came from within me. We even have these friendships, our relationships, our everything is basically we're exporting and outsourcing the inner resource that's always right here.
And so why do you think that people do that? And again, like, bottom line, why do you think people do that? Like, why do women do that? Because I agree with you in the standpoint that, I think that the world has gone, this women's lib movement has gone a little bit far in the stand that we've lost touch with it. Women have lost touch with who they are in that capacity. And there's, you can see this in blood work. This is not just my opinion. Go look at a woman who's, high on the level corporate ladder. And you can see this in their testosterone levels. Their testosterone levels are completely different. Their estrogen levels are down. We have a higher incidence of female infertility today than ever before. But no one wants to talk about the fact that the women's lib movement has taken away people from who they are. Now, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. That's not what I'm saying. So please don't take my words out of context. What I am saying, though, is that there is almost a struggle sympathetically to fight against this nature of who one is. And I guess, why do women do it? What's the purpose? I'm not a woman. You're a woman. Why do women do it?
I think there's two factors. I think one, typically this derailment starts typically from a core wound of some kind. And when we do that, we tend to protect it going forward by kind of whatever was exposed and vulnerable at the time. We have to protect it. And so we break into, our true authentic self, and then this kind of protector. And then I think this protector has gone through its life. And then this is the thing that kind of leads the charge now. This is the face that we show. This is the invulnerable, closed off, wounded self. And then the other reason I think that feeds into that is our needs. We all have basic human needs. And we have 5, but some of them are more important than others. And if it's something like certainty, well, then you take a vulnerability and that is basically raw uncertainty that can come and go and do whatever and go in any direction it wants to. And so the desires I love what you said about where this is going a little too far, is that we have all of these women that are basically caught up in I want to say the modality of doing everything a man can do without worrying about what a man can't do. If a queen herself would actually just focus on her own crown, she wouldn't be trying to take his. And this disrupt and this dishonoring of who we truly are and our authentic selves, that's where the imbalances come from. That's where the this dishonesty with ourselves creates these little rogue situations within our body. It creates disease. That's why we have anxiety and panic attacks. We're basically trying to live on this offset imbalance and wondering why we can't. Imbalance is the opposite of integrity. We don't have integrity with ourselves. We don't have integrity with our core energy. All amounts of chaos can stem from that.
So how does someone get that? How does someone get honest with themselves?
The better questions that you ask, the better answers that you will always provide. And I think that we have lived in we're living fast. We're living too fast paced. We are busying ourselves. We are basically creating the static that's going to fill the room with everything but that quiet, still, small answer. And it's how we define our entire lives up to that point requires the ability to get quiet and go, what does that actually mean? Perfect example, at a Tony Robbins event, I couldn't meditate. I'm a meditation teacher. I couldn't meditate. And I remember thinking, my life has always been chaos. My childhood's been chaos. I can't remember anything before the age of 12 years old. And I was trying to move into a meditative state, and Tony was guiding it. And I was getting so frustrated that I could not make it happen. Still with my masculine energy, I'm going to make it happen. Couldn't get myself quiet, couldn't get it to work. And I remember getting so frustrated. I stood up, walked all the way around. My friend, Dr. Udo and Raj were standing up at the front of the stage. And I remember he could see it on my face. And Dr. Udo said, what is wrong? What's going on? I was like, I cannot meditate. I cannot get my mind quiet. I cannot get anything quiet. My life is just chaos all the time. And I can't just sit down for a moment and try to sort through things. And he said something. I didn't realize how feminine of a charge this was for him to try and get me to challenge thinking. Meditation isn't something you do. It is something you allow to happen. And feminine energy, our allowing and our receiving is man's is to give, woman's is to receive. And I could not allow something to be given to me because I was too independent, too used to making it happen. It was go back and sit down, because it was something I really needed to do as a meditation and going back to like a core wound. It is the furthest and earliest memory. I couldn't recall it, couldn't remember anything before the age of 12. And my life was chaos. When I sat back down and I just let go, and this was not a glamorous let go. This was the bare minimum of let go. I let go just enough. And the first thing he goes, go to a memory before that. And I'm getting frustrated again. I don't have a memory before that, Tony. I don't have one. If you did have one, what would it be? And just play is also a feminine energy, moving back and forth. And I finally recalled a memory that was so wonderful. My inner knowing knew exactly what I needed to see. It was a memory, simple, of me at the age of 18 months, 2 years, just a really, really, really little kid, putting a pacifier on a dresser in the same spot every night. Now, this may seem like really small, but I was in a very receiving state for the first time in my life. And what it told me was that, yes, your life can appear chaotic if you look at the left side of the shelf that is chaotic. But here is a core memory of you doing something stable and consistent for yourself every single day, a stabilizing memory of me doing something consistently at a very early age. So not only was it defeating the story that I can't remember anything before the age of 12, but it was also defeating the story of my life was chaos. And so it was just one of the most profound memories. And to do that for other people would be if I could leave one calling on the world and leave one thing and one impression on any woman that comes into that Unshakable Woman program, is that nothing has meaning except for the meaning that we give it. And it is a choice.
Right. I love it. I love it. There you have it. Kara Payton crushing it and helping people and women change their beliefs, understand who they are, and understand their feminine power. It's such a gift of the work that you're doing into the world. And I truly can't honor you enough and acknowledge the work that you've done. You've had an amazing journey, and then you're about to touch the lives of so many people. And as someone who's on the same journey, who's helping people, I just want to thank you for being alongside this journey, helping people do what they want to do. How do people get in touch with you? How do people connect with you? How do people get involved in your world? How do they do that?
I love accessibility. I love meeting people where they're at and creating a community instead of something that's just pitching knowledge off the top of a mountain or something. So I'm really, really easy to get a hold of. KaraPayton.com is where all of my resources are for people who just want to find a way to create wherever they are some kind of change, some kind of loosening, some kind of getting into practice. So KaraPayton.com is the best way. However, I am super accessible on Instagram still. I have an Ask Kara every Monday. And so Kara Payton _ on Instagram is another really, really great way to reach me.
I love it. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Get in touch with Kara Payton. If you're a female who's trying to find yourself and get inside of your body, embody your true power, Kara Payton's the person for you. I want to thank you guys for listening to this podcast. Thank you, Kara, for being here. Appreciate your time, your energy, and your wisdom to help people inside of our community help grow. If you're listening to this, I want you to know that, look, rewiring your life is not just about thinking. It's about feeling. It's about integrating the mind and the body to become the greatest version of who you are, whether it be a feminine-powered entrepreneur or a male-powered individual, whatever it is you want to be, you have the power to create it. The mind and the body in unison are the creators of the world that you live in. Master the two so that you can master your life. I'll see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks for joining me. If you like this, you know the drill. Like, click, link, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. I'll see you guys next time. I'm Dr. 𝙏𝙧 𝘿𝙧, aka Dr. Rewire. Thanks a lot. Hey guys, if you like that video, click on the link over here and you're going to love the next video.